This is so right here in front of us all the time, and nobody sees it. It's so amazing. We don't see it, this thing that we can be conscious. And not just conscious of things, but conscious as being conscious. This consciousness that's looking through the eyes right now can know itself. And this is the big fish. In the Bible, this is the big fish. But it seems like a little fish to most people because they think, of course, I'm conscious. But as you know, it lapses so often. And it's so hard for it to retain recognition of itself being here behind the scenes. I think of it like a painting sometimes, that in the foreground of the painting is all of the eyes in us and all the activity of our life and everything, all the stuff going on all the time. And then in the middle ground of the painting is where we often are as the feeling of I. And then you start maybe to feel like I'm observing these eyes. And there's still a little bit of wrestling with the eyes. Try not to get stuck in them, or almost not fighting them, but there's resistance, and this resistance takes the form of a kind of effort. It requires energy. But then in the background of the painting is complete silence. There's no movement. Nothing is said. There's no voice. This is another thing. Awareness, consciousness never speaks, doesn't speak. It can sort of transmit an insight to the mind, and the mind will generate a thought that kind of is like a representative of awareness. But awareness itself never speaks. It's simply present. And the more that it's present, the more it can know without thinking. It sees, it's conscious, it knows what it's seeing. And it doesn't need labels. But of course, the labels help transmit. The mind acts as this filter with these labels. In the background is this stillness, this silence. We often don't trust this. We like to latch on to thought because it's so familiar. And we like to latch on to this feeling of I am Peter talking. That feels so familiar and true. And yet there's a background. And it's not that we step into the background. This is another funny thing. The person in the middle ground does not step into the background. The background realizes itself. See, this is very subtle, but this is where you start to realize it's the big fish. All our problems, they're in the foreground of the painting. And in the middle ground is this feeling of I that is wrestling with all of our problems. This background, there's no problems there. They can't go there. They can't exist there. There's no oxygen in the background where awareness resides as itself and closer to its source. There's no oxygen there for problems. Because you know why? You're beyond the mind at that point. Again, this is the big fish. You go beyond the mind. It's so easy to get caught in what you start to notice when you're more present. You notice in yourself eyes, you notice what's around you, you start to be present to things. There's something that can see the curtain in front of me in this room. And yet it's so habitual to go into the looking at the thing. Even to become more aware of it, notice little intricacies. But to use this looking as a realization of what's back here in the background, simply noticing and yet knowing that it's noticing. This is knowing the knower.